The lights were too bright, the music was too loud, and the boy was too small. Backstage, a little child stood alone, holding a microphone in his shaking hand. He was only 6. His heart was beating fast. The curtain was about to open. The crowd was screaming his name, but all he wanted was to go home and play. Hello, my amazing friends. Welcome to Learn English with Stories 365, the place where you grow your English, your confidence, and your heart. One story at a time. Today I'm not telling you the story of the King of Pop, not the legend, not the moonwalker. Today we go back before the fame, before the lights, to meet the boy behind the music. The lonely boy, the child with the golden voice, and a broken childhood. This is the true story of Michael Jackson before he became a star. A story of pressure, pain, and power. A story that will teach you new English words, help your listening skills, and inspire your soul. So get ready, my dear learners. Open your heart. Open your ears. Because this story is not just about music. It's about childhood dreams and the cost of greatness. Part 1. The Boy with the Voice. Michael Joseph Jackson was born on August 29, 1958, in a small house in Gary, Indiana, USA. He was the 7th of 9 children. His family lived in a tiny home with only 2 bedrooms. It was crowded. It was noisy. It was full of love, but also full of stress. Money was always a problem. His father, Joe Jackson, worked at a steel factory. His mother, Catherine, took care of the home and children. She loved music and played the piano at church. Sometimes she would sing gospel songs while cooking. Michael would sit on the floor and listen. He loved her voice. It was soft and full of feeling. Even as a little boy, Michael was different. While other kids were running and shouting, Michael was dancing in front of the mirror. He copied the way singers moved. He sang along to records. His favorite was James Brown. He would try to copy every step, every sound. One evening, Catherine heard something from the living room. She stopped. It was a child's voice, strong, beautiful, full of emotion. She walked in and saw little Michael singing by himself. She called Joe. "Come here. Listen to this." Joe listened and said only one thing. "That's our star." From that day, everything changed. Joe Jackson formed a group with his sons. He called it the Jackson 5. Jackie Tito, Jermaine Marlin, and little Michael. Michael was only 5 years old, but his voice was powerful. He sang lead. He danced with energy. And everyone noticed. They practiced every single day in the small living room. Michael was often tired, but Joe pushed him. Again, he shouted. Better, he demanded. Joe was strict. He believed discipline was the key to success. Michael didn't complain. He just sang again and again. At their first talent show, people stood up and clapped before Michael finished the song. He was small, but his voice filled the whole room. One woman said, "He's just a baby. How can he sing like that?" But Michael didn't feel like a baby. He felt like a star. Still, he was just a little boy. He loved singing. But more than anything, he wanted to make his parents proud. Especially his mother. She smiled at him and said, "You're special, Michael. God gave you a gift. Use it well." Michael smiled back, but deep inside he didn't know yet that his gift would also become his greatest burden. Part 2. Trained like a soldier. From the outside it looked like a happy family band. 5 smiling brothers dancing in perfect steps. Colorful clothes, catchy music, loud applause. But behind the music, behind the rhythm, behind the shine, there was something else. There was fear. Joe Jackson was not just a father. He was the manager, the coach, the boss. And for Michael, he was something even more. He was a shadow that followed him everywhere. Michael was only 6 when the Jackson 5 started practicing seriously. Every evening after school, while other children were outside playing, the Jackson brothers were inside rehearsing. The living room became a training ground. No fun, no laughter, just hard work. Joe stood in the corner with a belt in his hand. Again he ordered. The boys danced again. Faster. They moved faster. Wrong step. Snap. The belt hit the wall, or worse. Michael often made no mistakes. His talent was clear, but that didn't protect him. Joe pushed him even harder. "You think you're special," he would yell. "Then prove it." Michael was scared. He loved music, but he feared his father. "He scared me so much." Michael later said, "I'd get sick. I'd even vomit sometimes before rehearsals." Still, he never refused to sing. He never said no. He kept going. Why? Because deep inside he wanted his father's approval. Just one word. Just one smile. But Joe rarely gave it. The training was strict. Hours of singing. Hours of dancing. Joe made the boys watch videos of James Brown, Jackie Wilson, and The Temptations. Learn from the best, he said, and be better. Michael watched and learned. Every spin, every clap, every shout. He practiced them until they became part of him. He became a master at age 7. But something was missing his childhood. He didn't have time for toys. He didn't go to birthday parties. He didn't ride bikes with friends. He had a microphone, not a football. He had stage lights, not sunlight. At night, Michael would lie in bed and listen to other kids playing outside. He would whisper to his brother, Marlon, "Do you think they're happy?" Marlon didn't know what to say. One night, after a long practice, Michael sat alone. He looked at his small hands. They hurt. His legs hurt too. But what hurt most was his heart. He asked himself quietly, "Am I doing this because I love it? Or because I'm afraid?" But he didn't stop. He couldn't stop. Because in Joe Jackson's house, stopping was not allowed. Weakness was punished. Silence was expected. Perfection was demanded. And little Michael, he was just trying to survive it all. He wasn't just being trained to perform. He was being trained to be a soldier, a child, soldier of music. And the stage, it was his battlefield. Part 3. The curtain never closed. The stage lights were warm. The crowd was loud. And Michael smiled. He smiled because that's what stars do. But behind the smile, his heart was tired. Because for Michael Jackson, the curtain never closed. By the time he was 8 years old, Michael was performing almost every night. The Jackson 5 played in clubs, theaters, and small towns across the country. They traveled in vans, slept in cheap motels, and performed in smoky rooms filled with adults. Michael was too young to be there, but no one seemed to care. When the music started, he became electric. He danced like a grown man. He sang like a soul legend. People couldn't believe it. "That boy has magic," they said. "He's a little genius." But after the show, when the lights turned off and the crowd went home, Michael sat quietly in the back seat of the van, staring out the window. The other boys laughed or slept. Michael just watched the world outside, fast food signs, blinking street lights, long highways. He didn't talk much. He was always thinking. He missed home. He missed playing. He missed being a kid. But he had a job to do. Soon, the Jackson 5 got bigger. They signed a contract with Motown Records. The whole family moved to Los Angeles. Now, the real work began. Michael was only 10 when "I Want You Back" became a #1 hit. His voice was everywhere on the radio, on TV and magazines. The world had fallen in love with the little boy with the big voice. But the pressure only grew. Now there were photo shoots, interviews, rehearsals, recordings, tours, and more tours. Michael was always performing, always on. He once said, "When we were on tour, I would sit in hotel rooms and look out the window. I would see kids playing in the park. I wanted that. I wanted to run, to laugh, to be free." But freedom was not part of his schedule. Even when he was sick, he had to perform. The show must go on. Joe would say, "No excuses, no tears." Michael learned to hide his feelings. He laughed when people asked if he was tired. He smiled when cameras pointed at him. He danced even when his legs ached. Inside, he felt like a puppet, pulled by strings, smiling on cue, moving without rest. He once asked his mother, "Why can't I just be normal?" Catherine held his hand and said softly, "Because you're not meant to be normal. Michael, you're meant to shine. But sometimes shining is heavy. Sometimes it burns." At night, Michael would lie awake in fancy hotel beds listening to the hum of the air conditioner. He thought about his life. He thought about the crowds, the costumes, the cameras. And he wondered, when will I get to be me? But every morning the alarm rang. Another show, another city, another crowd waiting for their star. So he stood up, put on his smile, and walked toward the stage. Because for Michael Jackson, the curtain never closed. Part 4. Fame Without Freedom. By the time Michael was 11 years old, he was famous all over the world. The Jackson 5 were on every TV screen. Their songs were at the top of every chart. Girls screamed. Fans cried. Reporters followed them everywhere. But while the world saw bright lights and loud applause, Michael saw something else. He saw a cage. Most children his age were riding bikes or going to school dances. Michael was flying from city to city, doing interviews, learning scripts, singing, dancing, smiling, always smiling. He didn't go to a real school anymore. Instead, he had private tutors during short breaks between concerts. But it was never enough time. He was always behind. He was smart, but tired. The books made him sleepy. The words swam on the page. I wanted to learn. Michael once said, but I was too exhausted to think. Even birthday parties became impossible. When he turned 12, he had to perform that night. No cake, no games, no candles, just a quick happy birthday backstage. And then back to work. Sometimes fans would send him gifts and letters. He loved reading them, but they reminded him of everything he was missing. He read one card that said, "You're so lucky to be famous." He whispered to himself, "Am I?" Michael stayed in fancy hotels, but he hated them. They were cold, lonely, quiet behind the shiny doors. There was only silence. Sometimes he would press his face against the hotel window and look outside. He would see kids laughing in the street, playing with sticks, jumping in puddles, shouting with joy. He touched the glass and whispered, "That should be me." But it wasn't. His father kept the schedule tight. There was no time for questions, no time for rest, only time for success. Joe Jackson believed in one thing: winning. And Michael, he wanted to be loved, not just by fans, by his father. But praise was rare. Even after amazing performances, Joe would say, "You missed that spin," or "You were off beat in the second verse." Never, "I'm proud of you." Michael began to feel like a machine. Sing, dance, smile, repeat. Once during a tour, a reporter asked Michael, "What's the best part of being famous?" Michael looked down and said, "Nothing. I just want to be a kid." That answer never made it to the magazine. It wasn't the story people wanted, but it was the truth. Michael loved music. He loved his fans, but he didn't love the life. He missed laughter. He missed quiet moments. He missed being able to make mistakes without fear. And deep inside, he began to wonder, if the whole world loves me, why do I feel so alone? Because fame brought him everything except freedom. Part 5, A Voice Not a Child. To the world, Michael Jackson was a wonder. The youngest superstar. The golden voice. The perfect smile. But inside, he was breaking. As he grew older, the pain inside him didn't go away. It grew with him. He started asking deeper questions. Why does my father never say he loves me? Why do I feel scared when I hear his footsteps? Why do I feel empty when everyone is cheering for me? Years later, as an adult, Michael spoke in interviews about his childhood. His words were soft but heavy. "I loved my father," he said, But he was very strict, very hard. He scared me so much that sometimes I would throw up before seeing him. Michael remembered the rehearsals, the pressure the belt. He remembered crying quietly so no one would hear. He remembered being told to toughen up to be a man at the age of 7. He began to lose his sense of self. He didn't know who he was anymore. Was he a singer, a product, a puppet? At shows, he performed like fire, but backstage, he sat alone. He didn't talk much. He didn't laugh much. He kept his feelings locked inside. And when pain stays inside too long, it grows heavier. Michael started writing poems. Sad, beautiful poems. He wrote about feeling like a stranger. He wrote about wanting to disappear. He wrote about being seen by everyone but truly known by no one. In one poem he wrote, "People see my smile, but they don't know it's fake. They hear my songs, but don't feel my ache." Sometimes he drew pictures, faces with no eyes, boys standing in shadows, broken hearts with wings. It was the only way he could say what he felt, because Michael had the most famous voice in the world. But no one was listening to the little boy inside. He often spoke to mirrors. Who am I really? He looked into his own eyes, searching for the child he used to be. He couldn't find him. In public, Michael still smiled. He still waved. He still sang. But at night, he cried. He didn't cry because of the lights. He didn't cry because of the work. He cried because of what he lost: his childhood, his safety, his sense of love. Years later, people would wonder why Michael built a theme park called Neverland. They thought it was strange, but it wasn't strange to him. Neverland was his way of building the childhood he never had. He filled it with rides, animals, music, joy, everything he had once only dreamed of. Because deep down, Michael Jackson wasn't trying to escape from the world. He was trying to return to the boy he used to be. The boy who once sang in the living room. The boy who just wanted to be loved. The boy who was a voice, but never truly a child. Part 6. The Escape into Imagination. Michael didn't have a playground. He didn't have summer vacations. He didn't have sleepovers or school dances. But he had something else. He had his imagination. While other children built sand castles, Michael built entire worlds in his mind. When the hotel room was quiet, when the stage lights were off, and when the loneliness felt too heavy, he would close his eyes and escape. In his early years, Michael found comfort in small things. He had pet mice. Yes, real mice. He named one of them Ben. Ben was white and soft, with tiny black eyes. Michael loved him. He would talk to him, sing to him, and even write songs about him. Later that song, Ben, would become a #1 hit. But to Michael, it was never just a song. It was a message. You're my only friend. He also loved cartoons. He laughed at the silly characters. They didn't judge. They didn't yell. They just played. For a few minutes each day, Michael forgot the pressure. He became just a boy. But most of all, Michael loved stories. He wrote poems, stories, and letters to himself. He created magical lands where children were safe, where people were kind, where no one was afraid of their father. Music also became more than work. It became escape. He started writing his own songs. He poured his feelings into lyrics. When words failed, music spoke. One song said, "Have you seen my childhood? I'm searching for the world that I come from." He wasn't just singing. He was crying through melody. As a teenager, Michael became more famous than ever. But his imagination stayed with him. It became his secret place, a place where no one could hurt him, a place where he didn't have to be perfect. He dreamed of building a home where children could be free, where there were rides and games and animals, where no one would ever shout or hit. That dream stayed in his heart for years, and one day it became real. He built Neverland. People called it strange, but for Michael, it was a healing space. A world he created not to impress others, but to save himself. Because when the world became too loud, Michael closed his eyes and entered the world he built with his imagination. Imagination was his comfort. Imagination was his protection. Imagination was his escape. Conclusion and lesson. Michael Jackson gave the world magic. He gave us music, dance, joy, and wonder. But the world never gave him back his childhood. Behind the bright lights was a boy who cried alone. Behind the powerful voice was a child who whispered for love. Behind the legend was a lonely little boy from Gary, Indiana. He had everything: fame, money, success. But the one thing he truly wanted, he never had: freedom. Michael Jackson's story is not just about music. It's about pain. It's about pressure. It's about the cost of greatness. But it's also about strength. Because even with all his wounds, he didn't stop creating beauty. Even with fear, he didn't stop performing. Even with sadness, he gave the world happiness. And that, my amazing friends, is a powerful lesson. You may feel small, you may feel tired, you may feel like the world doesn't see your pain. But just like Michael, you can turn your pain into power. You can turn your story into light. You can create something beautiful no matter what you've been through. And as you learn English, remember, every word you speak is a step toward freedom. Every sentence you learn is a step toward your dream. Now I ask you, what is one dream you had as a child? Write it in the comments below. Let your voice be heard. This was Learn English with Stories. 365. Thank you, my amazing friends. Keep dreaming, keep learning, and never stop being you.